like 11 a.m.
Hmm. You can't do
No.
it. You can't do it. I want to do it live. I wanted to just get you randomly speaking about that story about cappuccino in Italy.
Yeah, it's a public service announcement. It's not to be done after, I think, unofficially like 11 a.m. or maybe noon. Maybe get away with it if it's before noon.
Because it's almost like a breakfast item if you add the milk, right?
That's right, yeah. And like if you go and try to order like an espresso with your meal, they'll be like, no, 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 no. Espresso strictly for after the meal. Okay. It's
Hmm.
for digestion purposes only. I
Hmm.
think in the United States, you're at brunch, you might order a latte or something, but
Yeah.
that ain't in Italy.
I feel like I'm gonna get there. I'm not at the stage where I'm like ordering coffee at the end of my dinner, but I feel like I just got to give it 10 years and then I'm gonna be wanting that every time.
It definitely
So,
helps to like draw out the meal. I know I sound
mhm.
like I'm 80 years old. And
Yeah, draw out the meal.
yeah, I
You know, I
mean,
can't stay up. I can't stay up.
I mean, if you want to stop drinking, of course you could have like a digestif. You could have a after dinner port, something like that. But
Yeah,
nothing uh, as simple goes down as easy as like an espresso shot at the end.
I love it. I love it. Hey, shout out to 007 for this royalty-free music. 007
What does
hitting
that
out the
sound
money.
like?
Is this gonna be our theme song, Nick?
Is this 007 like James Bond? It sounds very similar to James Bond. Diddy.
No, no, it's that's the name of the person who created this 007. Good name. Good name, 007.
Yeah.
Shout
Shout
out.
out
Shout
007.
out. 007. Welcome everybody to the Nick and Luis Sip Score Saver podcast. So excited to bring you another episode here. We got a good lineup here, Nick, don't we?
So excited. Yes, we do. Let's just get right into it. The big topic of the week. I mean,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
amongst many other topics. Super Bowl 58 just, you know, came and went, and it was a good one. Like the last 20 minutes of it were good. The
It took a while.
first
It took
four
a
and a half
while.
hours, not so great, but
Oh my
hit
goodness.
hit its stride. What did you think of it, my friend?
It was a good game. It was a good game. It's interesting because there was still a lot of action, although there weren't a lot of points scored.
Yeah.
But the fact that San Francisco just couldn't pull away when they had those opportunities, like when, Patrick Mahomes just couldn't get it going, that's where you got to really stack the points. Your offense has really got to take advantage of the moment and try to score more than 10 points, try to get 17, 20, 24, like really run up the score as much as possible because there's going to be a comeback. And so there's always that inkling in the back of my mind, even though for a majority of the game, I felt like San Francisco had the momentum and they obviously have the talent, right? Like Debo got the ball a couple times. I was really interested to see Debo Samuel play, see if he would be a difference maker. Christian McCaffrey, but ultimately, their tight end Kittle was not as much of a factor, and I think that made the difference.
I know, I can't believe they completely eliminated him from the game as much as they did. I saw him go into the locker room roughly beginning of fourth quarter, maybe even earlier than that. His like arm was like hanging down like this. So the health of that team kind of reared its
Mm.
head again. They lost a linebacker Greenlaw early in the game, who
Very
then
spontaneously, right? It was that was
yeah, like
that the
a
player
weird
who
like
just like
non-contact injury. It was nobody had that on their Super Bowl bingo card, that's for sure. But what happened, I think, as a result was Kelsey started lining up against a second string tight end and started beating them in the middle of the field. So that should be, I think, something that they look at. San Francisco. I wanted to play a game with you here. I don't know if this is
yeah.
exactly fair to Mr. Purdy, Mr. Brock Purdy, but um, I'll play a game of quarterback comparisons. I'm going to name a quarterback, and you're just strictly comparing them to Brock Purdy, all things the same with the San Francisco 49ers. And I want you to tell me if you think that the 49ers win that game. Does that all make sense?
So I'm taking. So is that the whole San Francisco team? Because that's the thing. San Francisco has an amazing team, top to bottom. That it
They
just
do. We're
happens
just
to have
talking
Brock.
about the quarterback position. You're making a swap at the quarterback position with the player that I name, and I want you to say either I'm sticking with Brock or I'm going with this other player.
Cool. Go.
Ready?
Hmm.
Josh Allen.
I'm taking Josh Allen.
I would do too. Yeah. I feel like the no Brock Purdy's really mobile and super athlete, but Josh Allen's just that dude. So I'll definitely take Josh Allen. Though the irony is he still hasn't beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
And
So
I know that there's a cap, in football. So it's not like free money, like the MLB is just crazy. But ultimately, I do feel like I'm starting to notice markets somewhat play a role, right? In how consistently good teams can be. And I just feel like Buffalo hasn't made the proper investments to really attract top talent. Like there's no good reason why a place like Buffalo doesn't have like a top of the line indoor stadium and then Las Vegas
dome.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
like it's wild. Like Detroit has it together. The Colts have it together. Why is it that Buffalo and I mean in New York they built that new I MetLife Stadium. I also don't understand. Like I guess some people just really
Mhm.
like the cold, but anyway, I think the caliber of talent top to bottom in San Francisco does not match up, especially on the defensive end of the ball, right?
Mhm.
So Josh Allen could just do him on offense in San Francisco and have an incredible defense to save the day when he needed it. So
Yeah.
absolutely Josh Allen. Credit to Brock. Brock Purdy's, the real deal. I think they can invest in him. He can grow. And I might be wrong. If he wins a
Mhm.
chip next year, he's still young and he could still develop Mr. Irrelevant. But I also feel like that name kind of sucks. Maybe he can grow into another nickname as time progresses, as he becomes more clearly relevant. But you got to take Josh Allen.
I do too. Yeah. Do we have time for one more? I have a good
Yeah,
one.
make it hard. Make it hard.
Okay, so AFC, Josh Allen, despite the poor history against Patrick Mahomes, we would definitely take him. What about Jared Goff?
That's a good one. That's a good one. And a little bit backstory. I think we talked about it in episode one. I was a big fan of what the Detroit Lions accomplished this year. I loved the way they play football. Um, I mean, bringing their team to almost to the promised land. And Jared Goff, this season definitely played as one of the top quarterbacks overall. But they're also a running team, so
Hmm.
the Detroit Lions are. So that's a little bit of a tough. I would now if I was a GM, you're also looking at Jared Goff, you're paying more than Brock Purdy. So if I didn't have to worry about that, if their cost was the same, I might take the chance on Jared Goff for the experience, but I also would be hesitant and I would maybe stick with Brock Purdy because it's also the mental challenge of moving from team to team, right? Brock Purdy has grown up with the 49ers. There's something about like developing within the culture. And clearly, Jared Goff has bought into the Detroit Lions culture. You sort of scoop him up from that spot and put him in another team, that might be too much of a mental toll. So you're not really getting the same Jared Goff. And so now I literally just talked myself into keeping Brock Purdy.
I see. Yeah. I mean, the question is just in that game, in that very small sample size of the Super Bowl we just watched, could Jared Goff have moved the needle enough to put San Francisco on on top? And honestly, I'll take the mobility of Brock Purdy. And I'd say that even if Jared Goff were in a 49ers uniform, Patrick Mahomes would have still pulled that out. Nothing against Jared Goff and all those reasons that you stated that you might want to have him on the team are all
Yeah.
I agree with 100%. It's just Patrick Mahomes. does things, has like a aura. It's like Tiger Woods in his prime, where you just had guys not even showing up on Sunday, like mentally, because the the threat of just being overtaken by a truly special player weighs on the mind. So,
And here's the
yeah,
problem. Here's the problem about talking about QBs is there's very few QBs who are worth the money that KC is paying Patrick Mahomes because football truly is a team sport, right? You're only if you invest so much money on the quarterback, that's one side of the ball. They don't play both sides, so it's really difficult to earmark so much of your funds because one interesting fact is the San Francisco 49ers were absolutely the better team. Kansas City had I think it was either one of the highest or the highest amount of drops per pass as far as their receiving core. That's crazy. And for them to win a Super Bowl with, like mentally, right? The strength of Mahomes as one of the elite all time great. That's it. He's one of the all time greatest quarterbacks of all to ever play the game. It's over for that. Is he the
yeah.
best? That's what he's competing for right now, right? In the subsequent years. But is he one of the best? He is absolutely one of the best. The mental strength to be able to push through when the chips are down and when your receiving core hasn't always been consistent, but you keep that confidence, that belief, man, and that's what's so beautiful about sports is you ultimately see the power of wills. Who wants it more? And it sucks to say, and it sucks for the San Francisco 49ers team because I know they played their hearts out, but ultimately the will of Kansas City was greater than that of San Francisco. And there's just nothing like it. And we saw it there towards the end. Overtime game, I mean, it was pretty electric for that last quarter.
It was, and I question as more and more news comes out about that overtime scenario, how much San Francisco had
Mm,
prepared for that to take place. And it almost looked like at the end the defense softened because perhaps they thought it was similar to regular season rules where if you're the team that's in the lead at the end of that overtime period, you're the winning team. They also thought that if they had scored a touchdown, they would have ended the game. And with the new overtime rules, that's most definitely not the case. Both teams get the chance to touch the football, even if the first team scores. So I felt like the defense was pulling off a bit, like thinking that they had the clock on their side. And honestly, I was a bit confused the way that it was described with the official saying it's a new
yeah.
ball game. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
say to me like, because that is thrown around so often that
Right.
it nothing, but it actually truly in the playoffs now is like you're starting a new game. Think of it like as a like in soccer when it goes into extra time, there's a first period of extra time, and then even that's not a great example because then that eventually ends and you go into penalty kicks. But I didn't realize myself that there was going to be a second period of overtime. So um, yeah, that all doesn't take away from the stuff that you were saying, right? Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Mahomes is in that conversation for the greatest ever, and yeah, no longer one of the greatest ever. I think that's pretty much granted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful to see, someone to sort of pick up the mantle of Tom Brady. And it sucks because I remember the Tom Brady years early on, like, this sucks. Someone else should win it. But it
Hmm.
makes because then there's always a villain, right? And it's such a beautiful storyline. And so anytime the Giants, right, when the New York Giants beat them like that was cool storyline. And that was even sweeter for the city of New York, for the G-men to be able to get those chips. It made it feel like 10, right? The two that they got, it made it feel like they've won 10 championships. So really, really great stuff from Mahomes and Casey. I got to ask you though, what's your take on that heated exchange, right? I feel like any sports people they got to talk about that heated exchange between Kelsey and Andy Reid.
I mean, from a sporting perspective, I don't really see that there's anything there. to analyze it. It's not saying anything about Travis Kelce's uh, standing with the team, his satisfaction. Obviously, he's going to retire a Chief, and I feel confident saying that they have a great relationship. These sort of conflagrations on the sideline happen so often. It's just that he's Travis Kelce, so the camera's naturally pointed toward him and seeing what he's doing
Mhm.
at all times, and then so that's what we saw. Um, Now, if I'm looking at it as like Travis Kelce as a potential romantic partner, the guy's a little crazy, a little intense. Intense is a better word than
Yeah,
crazy.
watch out, Taylor. Watch
Yeah.
out, Taylor. That's a lot of energy. That is a lot of
Mhm.
energy. Um, yeah, it's funny because she kind of talked about having like a little bit of a bad boy streak, and I feel like I thought maybe
Hmm.
Travis Kelce was an outlier in that. It's not. I
Yeah.
think it's still within the realm. So we'll see. Hopefully, definitely never want a relationship to end, but that sort of energy is just crazy. Um, Especially, and here's the thing though, and someone told me this, and I do agree that sometimes what happens when you have those emotional outbursts, as shitty as they are, right? As like inappropriate, unprofessional as that sort of outburst is of anger and emotion, if someone gives you that, who knows you, right? Not stranger, but like someone who knows you and just like burst out in anger and rage, there's a little bit of comfort that person has, that they feel that they can make that outburst too, right? Because if you know someone but you're really uncomfortable with them, or you don't trust them, or you don't like them, and really you just don't like them at all, you dislike them, you're not just going to do an outburst, right? And we tend to do the most sort of aggressive, mean things. I think of kids, right? You say some very mean things to your parents because you feel comfortable, right? You say, that we all unfortunately had that moment, like I hate you, because we know
Hmm.
it's just like what a reaction. We're gonna get a reaction, and so I do understand that there's a little bit of that dynamic where Andy Reid has created such a place where someone who I never thought would yell at Andy Reid, who Andy Reid has really helped make into, literally Andy Reid picked Travis Kelce over Tyreek Hill.
It's true. It's true. I mean, whether that's a good choice or not, at
They
both
they
of their
they
ages, but yeah,
they
remains
won
to
the
be seen.
chip.
Yep,
He
that's
picked
true.
you over Tyreek Hill. So I think there's a deep love and affection, and clearly a relationship. And I just think he's kind of like, yeah, it sucks, and we all falter, and you don't want to judge because he's at the top of that year, of Super Bowl. It's your top accomplishment, what you've been working towards, what you're putting your body through pain for. So I think it's going to happen, and like you said, it happens more often than not. But it's interesting narrative because I feel like Andy Reid as a coach creates such a fun sort of authentic environment for
Yeah,
players to be in, that I like to think that that played a role in Kelsey even feeling comfortable enough to have that outburst.
it's a great point. Great point about leadership and the culture set in an organization. I think Andy
Mm-hmm.
Reid is doing an amazing job. So yeah, he
Really, really
handled it
great.
very
And
calmly. He did
yeah,
not give it back. I mean, as far as we saw, was, you know, kind of, set that boundary, but kept Travis in. I can imagine other coaches and their egos benching. I don't know how you could bench Travis Kelce, but to make a point, perhaps the
yeah.
difference would have been like you need to sit down. Even for just a series is a huge disadvantage to the offense. So
So, I mean, awesome game, but like you said, really started kicking up there towards the end. But what'd you think? Because it's always half and half of people really like excited about the commercials and excited about the game. This year, I wasn't that impressed overall with the commercials.
I agree with you. And I look for just like one thing in a commercial. Is it going to make me laugh? And of course, there's a greater depth of emotional choices than just the funny commercials. But I mean, we live in some pretty sad and strange times. Just I'm looking for a good laugh. Some commercials were a definite miss in that regard. I'm thinking of like there was the I don't know if you watched this one, the Lindt chocolate commercial. It was cute and
Mm,
all, and the little truffle was dancing on the screen, and then they were singing a cute little song.
yeah,
Nah, man, give me the
that's
like
that's not Super Bowl
classic
commercial.
Doritos
Yeah,
commercials where weird stuff's happening, and the I know the obvious winner. We both mentioned the Dunkings.
here it is. Here it is, folks. I had to play. I
Looking
had to
at your
play.
desktop, my friend.
It's awesome. It's awesome. You see it?
No, looking at your desktop. Very nice picture. I think that's the Catalina.
I picked the wrong one, everybody. I picked the wrong one. Give me a second here. Okay,
Look at the
here we
desk.
go. We're still at the desktop?
No, no, I'm looking at a
Okay.
bedazzled Dunkin' cup. It's beautiful.
I don't think you should do this. Last year, she came to my work. Now I gotta show her what I can do.
He's here.
Affleck on the track.
What up, Bronx? For your consideration, here comes the Boston Massacre! The Dunkings! Touchdown, Tommy on them keys. Player coach.
Got it.
I'm open. And need no introduction, my partner.
Sometimes it's really hard to be your friend.
You said you were gonna support me. Dunkings!
Don't go away, take my heart. Why you dunking me, girl? Why you dunking?
Dunkings!
My heart.
How do you like them donuts? I'm so
You
sorry.
had to see it, but I forgive you. Lay us on the track.
Are we gonna be on the album?
We talked about this.
Let's go. You're blinded by them pinstripes. Wrap it up. Here goes Babe Ruth.
Tom, you can stay.
You remember what I told you?
Man,
It gets
man.
better each time you watch it, doesn't
Each
it? Like you
time.
notice more and more details.
And do you remember that year that Coinbase, the little boop, 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 the little like Pong commercial? Boop. It was a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
Boop. That was
Uh,
like people reacted to that being like a top that the Dunkings commercial. And first of all, they don't support us whatsoever. Why would they? But
not a sponsor.
I love the Dunkin' drip coffee. Like their drip coffee just hits. Like if I like way over Starbucks. Like I would absolutely consistently
Yeah.
go more to Dunkin' Donuts than Starbucks for the like if you're a coffee drinker, their drip coffee, even black, is just delicious. I don't know what they do. It's amazing to see Ben Affleck sort of fully embrace this sort of Bostonian entity,
In the
is
meme, right?
awesome.
You know
In the
the meme
meme,
of him with his Dunkin' looking very dejected, like he's maybe even a little bit hungover. The
he
commercial
embraced
had it
it. He
all.
embraced it.
Had it all. The not to like nerd out about this, but I think a Super Bowl commercial needs to have at least I don't know several of these things. I'm thinking like celebrity. So obviously it had a bunch of celebrities in it. Jingle doesn't hurt. Um, it has to have some sort of line that you take away at the end. So I feel like catchphrase, it's really hard to be your friend sometimes. Is like
Yeah,
it's going to be quoted again and again. It
it's
helps if
really
it like the Michael Cera commercial, though kind of silly. It played off of a meme. So anytime you could play off of social media, your commercial is just going to go like that. And yeah, obviously like super recognizable brands. So didn't need to go that hard, but they did. And so we're thankful for it. And you can like download that song now
yeah.
to
They
Apple
they
Music.
they tried. I feel like Survey thought that they had it, like they had it this year with this bad boy.
I'm Michael Cera, and I'm pleased to announce that this is my cream. CeraVe. Oh, you didn't know? Generosity. The truth has been hiding in plain sight. I am CeraVe. Can human skin truly be this moisturized? Oh, yeah. Wow. Let my
I feel like
cream hydrate you.
he might be a climber. He might be a
I
climber.
like
That might be
this.
real.
The beard is giving climber.
Skin. 3 essential ceramides. All-day hydration. I'm telling them our story. CeraVe. Developed with Michael Cera. V. We like? I just think it would be really nice if people think that I make this. So, that's my thing.
It's good. He did good.
The full version had a lot more to it than I remember.
Yeah, I went to full form. And that's funny because it might have been the alcohol, but around that time I started not paying attention as much to the commercial. So literally the only one I truly remembered as a great commercial was J-Lo and Ben Affleck with Tom Brady, Matt Damon. I mean, come on. Like the star power in that commercial, epic. But everything else, I mean, I would put the Michael Cera commercial probably number 2. But everything else just sort of faded into the background. There was nothing special about it. This was a weak Super Bowl ad commercial year.
Yep. What do you think of Usher? Quickly, your hot Usher takes.
Loved it. I mean, I was a huge Usher. I kept telling people, he taught me how to love. He taught me how to love throughout the night. My brother-in-law tried to make an argument of like, oh, is he relevant? Why are they playing? But the special guests matter, right? You have Alicia Keys, you got Luda, you got, what was it? Lil Jon.
Mm-hmm.
Bruh, that's it. If you don't, and I think what Rihanna didn't accomplish, although her repertoire of music is phenomenal, it's like if you don't have special guests, if you just make it about your music, it doesn't hit, right? So I think the Dr. Dre year was one of the best years just because of the amount of special guests. Like I want to see other people. If you don't see other people, it feels like you want to be surprised. And I felt Usher did a great job surprising, flowing. His music's amazing. He moved amazing. I mean, it was a top notch. I wish Vegas was like someplace I actually would go to watch some of these residencies and watch Usher, because I think that's probably a worthy residency to watch.
Yeah. I think he's actually going on tour again starting in August. So
oh wow,
maybe he's going to be in a town near you. Wanted to shout out her. You didn't mention hers appearance. It's really difficult to just refer to her as her, but you know that's her stage name. And she just shredded that guitar. I loved it. I'm a big guitar guy, so that was really cool. And if I just had one slight critique, hopefully they could do this better next Super Bowl. It's that, you know, that like the especially the huge performers like Usher are doing a lot of dancing, so they're not always going to be singing every single lyric, and the music pumped into the mixing for CBS was too quiet. I couldn't really make out the like song unless he was singing it. So if anything, just like wanted to hear the music a bit more. But
that's a good point.
Very small thing.
So kind of final thought here, Super Bowl related, because I feel like we got to move on to some of the other news of the day. Way too early Super Bowl predictions. 2025 in New Orleans.
Are we predicting the Super Bowl halftime show? Because I got
okay
plus 100 odds on. That's not even. I got Taylor Swift. I'm going with Taylor Swift next year. It's happening.
Taylor Swift would be huge.
I don't think they can afford. I don't think that she can take that time out to do that.
The problem is the relationship's got to last that long. So it's got to rotate around. If it can last that long, if Kelsey can hold her down for that long, I think it's a no-brainer. You pay her whatever she needs to get paid. There's going to be so many eyeballs on that. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy what she's been able to develop. You just have to respect it so much. I know there was that image of Roger Goodell talking to Taylor. I imagine it was talking about something like this.
I mean, you always got to ask the question, right?
Be like, hey, would you be interested? And not only that, because I feel like sometimes they like go for older music, not necessarily current, because they want to keep it broad. But I definitely think there's a broad appeal to Taylor Swift. And so I hope they're able to nab it. So halftime prediction here. You heard it first. If whatever, pay her whatever, which is probably like $1 billion. You need to pay her $1 billion just to perform at the halftime show. You will make it up in the amount of viewership, amount of hype for the Super Bowl.
For sure. We're just going to speak it into existence here.
Yeah. Those Super Bowl tickets will exponentially go up, like even further than their astronomical price. I fully am on board with the Taylor hype train, and she can't. Wherever she touches is gold. The Midas touch.
It's true.
The Midas touch.
Making me, just fully realize that the Super Bowl is way more than just like a sporting event where you used to tune in because you're going to watch two of the best teams and it would be a very solid game. And now it's more about the entertainment value. I think the Las Vegas host site is, point that it's more than just like being there for the game. You need to create a fan experience. You need to have really great the halftime performer. You need to have great amenities, new stadiums. So yeah, that's where the future is going. Do you want to talk teams that you think are going to be in it next year really quick?
Yeah, I do. I have a feeling that I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to make their way in.
Oh, spicy. I can't imagine that after how the season ends. Okay, so that's your NFC team.
I think they're going to get it together, and they'll find a way. I think they're a talented team. I think they just need to add a couple of pieces in the offseason, whether through the draft or free agency, and they're back into the chip. I think San Francisco is going to hold tight on Brock Purdy, and I think that's going to be a detriment to the talent on their team. They're not understanding, and they don't want to spend the money. I get that, because then you could spend the money on likes of Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey. Like you have Brandon Ayuk, you have all these talented other players that you can invest in. So keeping that investment small, it sounds like a cool idea, but I do think that is going to hinder them from going back to the show. I think this was their chance to get that one chip. I don't think they're going to come back again. But when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, I see a tremendously talented team and a dude in Jalen Hurts who can absolutely get them there, right? If they can just put the pieces together, get mentally prepared. It's not about the talent. It's not about the physicality. They just need to get mentally prepared for the season. They can absolutely go all the way and make it to the Super Bowl. And then you have to say on the AFC side, I think Kansas City is going to make it back.
The chance for the three-peat.
The fact that they just went to it, I was kind of mad. It's like, why are people talking about the three-peat? Why can't they just enjoy it? But then it was like Andy Reid mentioned, and it's like everyone's mentioning. It's like, oh shit, they just understand. And this goes back to what I think Philadelphia needs to do. It's a mental game. You need to put it into your mind, put it into existence that you are going to win a Super Bowl, that you are going to win a Super Bowl for a specific reason. And for them to feel motivated by making history with the three-peat, I don't doubt it. I look at the teams at the AFC. Baltimore gets way too much hype. They do not have the investment top to bottom, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to be like Lamar Jackson is going to take you to the promised land. You have to have multiple superstars, at least 2 or 3 on the defensive end of the ball to make it to the chip. You got to be solid on defense. I don't think Baltimore is there. That's just my hot take. But we'll see. But I think Kansas City's going to make it back. So I got Kansas City and Eagles. What about you?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot to to talk about there, and that's probably for another episode. Maybe when we go into like NFL draft time, we can
Mm.
then
Yeah, we'll do the
go from
draft
that because like
episode.
the quarterback situation, where does Caleb Williams go? Obviously, he's not going to make it to the Super Bowl, but was that like because I have a sneaky dark horse NFC pick, really like the Green Bay Packers next year. Um,
Ooh,
I don't know if I
Jordan
want to make
Love.
them. I don't know if I want to make them my Super Bowl pick, but I feel like they're going to disrupt. Yeah, obviously, like Dallas had their eyes set on the Super Bowl, then they met the offensive juggernaut, which is Green Bay Packers. The wide receiver core, super young, really good. Um, but who to go with?
On the
Think
AFC side, are you gonna
the
go Kansas City?
I still haven't fully decided on the NFC side. Let me go with let me go with um Green Bay. I'll go with Green Bay after all.
Nice,
Just to say you
nice.
heard it here first. Why not go big or go home? And then on the AFC side, just out of interest of picking different team, let's go with the Bengals. Getting
Ooh,
Joe Burrow back.
people getting sleeping on it and talk about they do have talent on the defensive end of the ball, and they could
Absolutely.
add to it. They could. That's the thing. Great point with the draft. They could add to it. Man, people are sleeping on Joe Burrow. If he can stay healthy, he's the
Hmm.
real deal. He's the real deal.
I think this season was such a fluke. And I mean, they got off to a rough start. Then injury happened. It just was failure to launch from the beginning. So I may
I
regret
like your
this.
picks.
I may regret this after, but I'm going Bengals, Packers. I don't think that's ever been in a Super Bowl before. I mean,
Mm.
if you care
Oh
to
no,
correct me for it, that
no.
like I kind of want to speak that into the universe as well. A little like Joe Burrow back in Louisiana kind of situation going on. Jordan Love looks like actually Aaron Rodgers. And I kind of think like sorry, just to kind of drill down on this
Oh man.
subject. I feel like if Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt, play number one, we would have been talking about the Jets in the Super Bowl this year. But not
Mm.
I don't think that next year is the same thing.
Yeah, because it's a recovery year, and he's already an older player. So a recovery year where there's not many years ahead um, is tough to be able to say, "Oh yeah, he'll be back." And you know what's
Hmm.
so interesting? What I love about your Green Bay Packers pick, and this is a real good testament to what I think NFL teams need to do. I know they didn't do it with Joe Burrow, but you need to if you really believe in your quarterback, let them rest for the year. Let them play behind a solid veteran quarterback. And granted, not every team is a luxury. Like the Bengals didn't have that. But if you
Yeah.
have because I think of Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. Alex Smith took the Chiefs to the playoffs. They were a regular contender. They were a solid team. Mahomes got to see that. He got to witness it. He got to take his time, really understand the game, visualize it in his way, consume it at his pace, and then just light the world on fire, right? Year two. And I feel, or like whenever he gets to start, right? Because I think Jordan loves this is the exact same situation. Like, really gets to just take in the game, sort of see it. And now suddenly in the playoffs, the first year he starts, so absolutely worth keeping your taps on, folks. I do think Jordan Love could be that. That is a great dark horse pick there,
That dude,
Nick.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
it's a
the arm
great.
talent is, I mean, exceptional. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, got a whole year to go. A lot of things happen. Obviously, I think the Vikings and the Lions will have a lot to say about that outcome. But that I'm just putting it out there, putting it out into the
I love
world.
it. Love it. Love it. All right. So, in some company capitalistic news, streaming services are going crazy, right? Their model is essentially built on just an endless supply of subscribers. But naturally, the subscriber universe eventually plateaus. There's just only so many people who have access to like quality internet who want to subscribe to these streaming services. So you're always going to be tapped out. right? So unfortunately, a lot of them started with so much hype, but are recognizing that they're losing a lot of money. Because they are losing a lot of money, folks, we might have a very big merger on the horizon in the sports world with ESPN owned by Disney. I don't even know if like will Disney like release its stakes? Maybe not, because they also kind of own Fox too, 21st Century Fox. So ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers joining forces here to create its own sort of like connected streaming universe for sports. I don't know. What do you think?
I feel like we already went through this. It's like then in the 1920s we realized that big monopolies were bad and we needed to break these apart so that people could actually like choose what they wanted and where to put their money. Anyway, it doesn't feel like you have a choice anymore anyway in the current environment, because if you want to watch, say, the Champions League, you need to have a Paramount Plus
Yeah.
account. And then recently, I mean, actually not all that recent now, but like the Peacock venture into NFL playoffs where you had to have a Peacock account supposedly to view the Chiefs Dolphins game. So I'm just feeling like in this streaming universe as a consumer, I'm not winning if I'm the person like who's actually buying all of these disparate accounts. I mean, and that's the plateau, right? Because if they're not enforcing the login information, you're just having the same four accounts spread about whatever 20 people.
That's
Um,
right.
if you're doing it right. Like if you're maximizing your account, you're spreading the love. But um yeah, that idea that all of the, Fox Sports and Bali Sports, that's another thing, right? Because Bali, whatever, is a casino, right? Or my let me look this up here.
Yeah.
So
Uh-oh.
you got
Uh-oh.
doing it
Valley
live.
Sport. We're doing it live. Valley Sports, regional networks.
Yeah, they do the regional networks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Timberwolves, I see there on the list. It was a little while, I remember, for me, because I have been streaming Hulu exclusively, so I don't do any cable. Everything's from my internet
Mhm.
streaming. And so like there was a good year that I couldn't get any Florida Panthers games because of the Valley Sports sort of trying to go against some of these streaming services. And it's the same thing with other sports. It happens every year. So they need to get something together. Now, if you're telling me that there's one platform where I could get every sport, but does that get rid of the passes? Because I also feel I hate the passes. I never want to pay for the NFL pass. I never want to pay for any of these other passes. I want to be able to
Right,
just follow my team.
right. I feel like Apple TV is trying to do this
Oh man, they
where,
sold Messi hard.
right, so they have like exclusive MLS rights, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we watch the MLS. I don't know how many other people are watching the MLS frequently enough to warrant buying their MLS pass. Regardless, though, you can sync your other accounts to if you're an Apple user, of course, you can sync it to your Apple TV and then, but in doing so, watch all of your different streaming services in one place. That's not really an answer to having to have so many different accounts, but it's a nice band-aid solution. Um, I mean, I don't know how you stream. I got like Amazon, because then there's like another market with like you got to buy a streaming stick. You gotta have your internet, hooked up really well, or else you're lagging behind. And that just it kind of stinks as a sports fan to feel like you're never gonna be on top of what they're about to do to make viewing sports more and more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it's making it inaccessible. And I think when you look at wanting to grow sports, you make it exclusive and inaccessible. You really limit the growth of that love of building the love for that sport. So I personally I love the MLS seasons being on ESPN just because more people have ESPN. And so having it on ESPN Plus, not to just like pin one horse against another, but I feel like it's more likely that there's more accessibility if you just put it on ESPN as opposed to something else like Apple TV. And so now I don't watch my MLS team. You're going to see me. I rock an Orlando City jersey. I was raised in Orlando, so I'm a big Orlando City sports
Orlando
fan.
City jersey. Oh, we should do MLS shirts next week then.
Yeah, next week MLS, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk a little bit about MLS, a little bit of the hype, and more about Leo Messi and what he's bringing to the league. But this is a great segue, Nick, into Champions League soccer.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Got a round of 16 kicked off this week. Yeah, I know you all could check scores on your own, but what really stood out to me was Bayern. Bayern went down a man and they lost 1-0 to Lazio. So Serie A teams, they kind of I'm gesturing, they're batting above their weight. And I feel like if you're in Serie A, that it does say the Italian league, you need to embrace that sort of underdog mentality, get a little scrappy with it, um, maybe get that other team down a man, and who knows? We saw Inter versus Man City, and if I mean this is going way back to last year's Champions League final. Ultimately, Man City won the treble, became this like international historical team, right? But Inter should have won that game. Minus Romelu Lukaku. Folks out there who watched it, you know what I'm talking about. Inter would have won that game. So I don't feel like the disparity from Premier League teams to other other European leagues is that great. So just I feel like in the United States we have like a huge Premier League bias, and you know, I'm a huge Manchester City fan, so I vibe with that. I love the Premier League. I love watching that domestic league, but in the Champions League, it's hard to go against one of those uh, sort of perennial Champions League teams, Real Madrid, for
Yeah, I
example.
was gonna say, I feel like being in South Florida, La Liga is way more of what's talked about
No, is that
here
right?
in this
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
Yeah, than the Premier League. Just because Hala Madrid, right? Because you have some phenomenal teams in La Liga. Again, similar to the Premier League, the perennial Champions League, visitors, champions. I mean, obviously, Real Madrid, Los Galácticos, right? They're just out of this world. And it's just nuts how they're able to be so good all the time. Like, and what's so unique about some of these past few years in Real Madrid post, Cristiano Ronaldo and kind of post, some of the stars is like, Gareth Bale, right? Is that like their players just sort of blend into the limelight. Like they're just a phenomenal team, and they're ready to just grow and be always in the mix and always have a chance to be one of the best teams in Europe. And so that's so awesome. Bayern is in that same element. Bundesliga is a beautiful, like, I love watching Bundesliga soccer, just the energy of the stadiums. I find it to be more energetic than the Premier League games. And the Premier League games are
Mhm.
incredible. But if I had to rate the Bundesliga, just with the smoke and the flags and it's just, maybe it's more aggressive. Maybe it's that too, the German aggression. Um,
If
um,
you get pyrotechnics involved, I'm in.
it's all in, but I
Um,
just love um I love watching some Bundesliga. I don't know what my team is. I love watching BVB, and they've been respectful of like getting some great talent in the US, and so that's always cool. Love watching Madrid play, both Atletico and Real. And then
yeah.
shout out, I think Ligue 1, in with Paris, this is going to be one of the last years. I don't know what happens post Mbappe. right?
Right.
Because this is where Real is finally getting their person, their superstar. In my opinion, it took this many post Cristiano Ronaldo years for them to
Hmm.
finally get their superstar in Mbappe that will probably consistently get them into the final and winning Champions League. So, I know Man City's big, but it's interesting. Maybe the Latin American community vibes of more and is more open to some of those um, other leagues, and that's what's great. I wish America had something else similar to it. It's so cool to just like combine these leagues, put them together, see who comes out on top. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
It's elevated the game. It's beautiful.
Imagine for a moment, like we didn't have to put up with, um, I don't know, name a shitty team in the NFL.
The Commanders.
This is a good one because I was about to say, what if we replace the Commanders with, in sort of a relegation scenario, with the DC Defenders, a juggernaut? I know that they have completely different talent levels and whatever, but just imagine. I've actually heard this thrown around more with college football than with any like
Mhm.
professional sport because there's so much money in American professional sports, and people who are bringing that outside money in would rather invest
Yeah.
in MLS team without the fear of relegation, right? As opposed to investing in a European soccer team where relegation might be a real factor in the money lost from sponsorship deals. So
Yeah.
I would love to see relegation in the United States. I would love to see Champions Leagues, and the MLS is doing this in the CONCACAF, and yeah, I think that's it.
They
like a club
in
Champions League.
and they established a little bit of the layers with USL championship, USL League One,
Hmm.
USL League Two. They at least if MLS wants to become even more interesting, just embrace relegation. But it's so hard for because we're such a capitalistic society, and really relegation is a form of sports socialism, right? Where
Yeah.
you're essentially essentially putting down, regulating billionaires and millionaires to lower levels if they're not willing to invest. But man, does it keep the competition top notch, and it keeps those investors who aren't really about the team. It keeps them in low, so they want to get out, right? They want to sort of get out
Hmm.
of that investment because they don't want to properly invest in the team. I love the idea of relegation. I hope MLS actually embraces it, right? Because it's not yet such a popular league that I think relegation would actually like prop up the entirety of MLS and its structure to a higher
Hmm.
standard. It elevates the game because there's new fresh players, there's hunger, there's a David versus Goliath atmosphere consistently. I know we have the US Open Cup, which also kind of puts that into perspective.
Yeah.
But you give those lower level teams an opportunity to reach the top to get some of those big boy dollars. Man, I love relegation. Actually, I must say one of the teams that I followed on Premier League that's no longer it's relegated to the championship, but they're lining up at championship, so hopefully they'll be in Premier League next year. Is Leicester City. Love the
Oh,
Leicester
class.
City
Oh man.
story. The
How can you
Wolves,
forget
man.
Leicester
Yeah,
City? What was it,
yeah.
2015? Just amazing. Love that team. They should be back. I mean, it's just,
Fingers
however, the
crossed.
relegation flip side is it's one bad year and you're sending a team down who has actually got really great talent. And so and one of the things about MLS, just one last thing on the relegation topic, is that it would create an awkward scenario because let me look this up actually. I think New York City,
Hmm.
the soccer club in MLS, has sort of like feeder teams in the lower divisions. So how could other teams, say like my team, the Portland Timbers, who to my knowledge don't have like a Timbers 2, how could they compete whenever if you've got like a really like solid star in the lower divisions, you can move them up to, depending on the transfer rules, right?
Right.
Move them up to the top tier league. So that's one thing to consider. In the United States, we always have these like farm teams, to borrow a phrase from MLB and minor leagues. So that would be
Yeah, I think
something
you
that,
could change the names. I think they would immediately, if relegation comes into play, you could change Portland 2 or some of those ridiculous. I mean, because there's lazy names. Those are lazy names, lazy
mm,
farm systems. I think soccer is a beautiful sport. It's captivated the world because of that. And I think the dynasties that we have in world soccer, world football, is because of the idea of relegation, right? It forces people to invest in their teams. And when they don't
yeah.
invest, when they sell, when they're Miami Marlins of football, of soccer,
Hmm.
they go into no man's place, right? So really kind of watching Wrexham with
Hmm.
the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that I can't
McElhaney,
remember,
Rob
Mike
McElhaney.
McElhenney, Rob
Yeah.
McElhenney, and Deadpool, which I also can't remember his name for whatever reason. Aviator Gin, Mint Mobile. I know everything he's invested in, but
That
I can't.
guy, that guy in everything.
Reynolds,
Yep,
Reynolds,
yeah, that's right. Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan
Yep.
Reynolds, Ryan
Ryan
Reynolds.
Reynolds.
Shout out to Ryan. Sorry, Ryan, and sorry, Rob.
Or no.
I love what they're doing. Like, and I hope they
Hmm.
go all the way. I hope that
I
in
hope they
year
make it to the
couple,
Premier League. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gonna take. I feel like it's
Uphill battle,
honestly
but
like yeah, it's a 5 to 10 year process. But if they stick it out, I think they absolutely can do it. Um, yeah, soccer Champions League. Who's your prediction? Who's going to the final?
well, I gotta just say, there's no such thing as tanking in soccer. We're talking I live in DC. We talk about tanking all the time because
Mm.
that's all we can manage to do. No tanking in soccer whenever you can get relegated. But my prediction, um, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of chalky in this. I don't know. Let me see here. So so never mind. They do a redraw each round, so there's not like a bracket. And so
No.
it's tough to say who the matchups are going to be. Just on talent alone, let's go with Man City and Real Madrid. They may end up meeting one another in an earlier round for all I know, but yeah, that's just my take.
Yeah, hard to argue with that, to be honest with you, because this is one of those dynasty until they start faltering, like showing signs of breaking. You got to go with the consistency. I actually gonna throw depending on the breakout because if PSG gets Real again or PSG gets Man City again, I don't think they're gonna pass that round. But if they can manage to
Mm.
finagle around those teams and get other teams, I do think they can make it to the final this last year of Mbappe. Which is an interesting conversation because I still feel like PSG could still keep Mbappe. He seems like a kind of topsy turvy type of guy. I wish his agents and his PR team would be able to keep some of his decisions closer to the chest because it's bad for his brand to act like he's this person that goes this way and then that way with
Hmm.
opinions. But I actually think PSG is the team to look out. So I'll put PSG and Real, depending on where they end up. They don't have to play each other. So,
Love it.
Caitlin Clark. This was a great. If you didn't watch the Nebraska Iowa women's basketball game prior to the Super, what a great aperitif! It was a
You
great
missed out. Yeah.
amuse bouche. Amuse bouche. It was a great
Mhm.
amuse bouche to the not aperitif. Sorry, that's the afterwards. It was a great amuse bouche to the Super Bowl. So competitive. Again, I'm just going to say it. Women's college basketball is incredible. You get some great athletes, you get some great energy. And honestly, some of these teams are just supporting their women athletes so much. It's just electrifying. And that Nebraska Iowa game was just back and forth. You didn't know where it was going to go. I think Caitlin Clark started that game needing like, I don't know, it's like 36, 30, I mean,
Yeah, it was a
like
high number of points. I think it was 38.
38 points. She
Yeah.
scored 30 points. She's 8 points away. It's happening tonight, February 15th, 8 p.m. They're playing again. Worth your eyeballs, worth your attention against Michigan. She's obviously going to break the record during that game, but let's see if they can keep momentum, kind of learn back and get back into the victory column with this game as well.
Yep. So next time, whenever this actually launches, she will be an NCAA record holder.
Incredible.
And
It's
yeah,
incredible.
it's a great time to be watching. So tune in.
Yeah, some wonderful athletes there in college women's basketball. So we'll keep updated because I honestly think this is going to be an electrifying season. I cannot wait to see more and more games as time progresses. So that's really it on the sports front. This is a savor part of our podcast, right? A little bit more of
You've
the
made it.
food.
You've made it through the sports, and now you can savor.
Yeah, a lot of banter. Now it's time to savor. And we've been sipping. In that context, we thought it'd be fun to talk about some of our best cheap beers, right? I know some of us, we like to be very frou-frou, very millennial with our craft beers and our choices. And of course, craft beers are just delicious and awesome. And we want to support local businesses and local organizations. I think that's what makes craft beers so important to our communities. But at the same time, sometimes a little corporate cheap beer just hits the spot. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of our favorite cheap beers and maybe the memories behind them. So I'm going to let you lead off here, Nick.
Yeah, but let me just say to start, like, what hits better than Friday afternoon, you're knocking off of work, beer that's of a light variety, maybe spelled Lite, so that we can connect with the fans at home. Yeah.
Hint,
You know what I'm
hint,
talking
hint.
about. Yeah, I just feel nothing better, right? Cold beer and like a Friday afternoon, or a cold light beer when you're on the beach, or when you're camping. All these things just they bring back memories. They of good times. They're just iconic. So yeah, I gotta give a shout out though here, and kind of to change topic away from light beer. I feel like pretty much everything in that segment tastes pretty much the same. I don't really have a strong preference one over the other, but I want to give a shout out to Yingling, which is my favorite cheap beer from Pottstown, PA. They call themselves the oldest brewery in the United States, but I don't know what that means. Like what counted as a brewery and what counted as
it counts.
being
Nick, it
oldest at
counts.
that point.
It counts. It matters.
We'll give
it
it to
matters.
them.
Stop getting
And don't
technical.
care for the historic significance at all. I just like that it's something different. It's amber lager, so it's got a little bit of a different sort of malt to it, I guess. It doesn't matter. It goes down smooth. It's great on draft, which, like any cheap beer, should be both like fantastic in can, bottle, draft. Checks all the boxes for me. That's my go-to cheap beer from the store. Yingling is pretty. Do you have Yingling down in Florida?
Oh yeah, they actually have a distribution center in Tampa. So Yingling's a very popular cheap beer here. Absolutely.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
My uncle has like a Yingling neon sign that I'm very jealous of. So any any Yingling marketing paraphernalia, bring it my way. I love it.
Yeah. By the way, no commercials, no Yingling commercials. Very rarely seen Yingling commercials.
It's true.
If you know, you know. That's it. That's all you
You
need
gotta
to
be
know.
in the know, and now you all are in the know.
Yeah.
What's
Well,
your
everyone is in the know with Yingling.
and
Everyone.
yeah, but not really on the West Coast. Like on
That's
the West
true.
Coast,
Well, they got
different stuff.
rain dogs. They
Rain.
got Mount Rainier rain dogs. Mount Rainier.
Oh, I know. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
familiar. I can
that
dabble.
is so good. By the way, if you're
Yeah.
out fishing on a very
Well,
Pacific Northwestern rainy day.
yeah, like 90, I mean not 90%, but like lion's share of the hops grown in the world are grown in the Pacific Northwest. So you're getting, even in the cheapest of beers, you're getting the freshest stuff. I
Yeah.
think. I like, at least I like to
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I will say, having tasted Mount Rainier, it's not that it's so incredibly different from some of the other cheap beers, but it has some zing of some locality to it, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what makes it pretty incredible. I also remember, not that this is necessarily like a super cheap beer, but it's also a pretty commercial beer on the Pacific Northwest, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, Nick. Sessions, the little stubbies, little
Hmm.
sessions beer, the little stubbies. They're from Portland, Oregon. And Anyway, delicious beer. But I got to start. It's not on my list, but I have to say it because it's like my first introduction in college to, like, my dad was a Bud Heavy. I feel like every person's dad was a Bud Heavy person during, like, whatever generation they're a part of. Bud Heavy was that beer.
Was
I
that guy.
Yeah, I never really got into it, but that was kind of technically the first beer I tasted. But the first beer I actually drank pretty consistently in college, and it was because it was cheap. I went to school for a couple years in Alabama, and Keystone Light.
Hmm.
So if you don't know about how some of these, like, light beers are made, like Natty Light, and all, literally Keystone Light is leftover beer from the Coors Light making process. So you're
Hmm.
drinking a beer that's worse than Coors Light. But it was, for a 30 pack, a dirty 30, it was like $10. And so, like, like, you have a party for $10 or $30, you got beer to throw out to people, and it could get
Hmm.
crazy. And so that was my introduction to cheap beer, truly on a scaled perspective, is Keystone Light. So I got to give a shout out to Keystone Light because it did provide in many parties. I tried not to drink it too much. It's never what I got really drunk on. It's usually what I would sip on to sort of plateau myself a little bit.
Got to keep the
Um,
buzz going,
Got to keep
less.
the buzz going, but not get, like, sloppy either. So
Yeah.
Keystone Light would do the job. But as something that two, I got to give a shout out here on the American front, is I really do, and I know there's people who are really more of the Miller Lite. I love Miller Lite. Miller Lite and Coors Light, for me, both can be just wonderful. Like, I feel no shame ordering a Miller Lite, and the same thing with the Coors Light. Coors Light, for me, for those who don't know, in Puerto Rico, like, Coors Light's definitely that beer. It's a
Mhm.
very popular beer in Puerto Rico, and you can imagine why. And you're like, oh, because it tastes like water. That's the whole point. People stay hydrated in the hot sun, and are able to drink their little cervecitas. And Coors Light with the little Blue Mountains, nothing better than ice cold little Blue Mountain Coors Light. But I want to throw something here to the audience here, Nick, that they might not know about, that I
Hmm.
realize is not um, something that's readily available all across the country, or at least in a variety of forms. I want to talk about the 8-ounce beers. Is
Whoa,
beer
what
too
is that?
big? Is beer too big? So I see this a lot when I visit Puerto Rico. Is a majority of the beers come in mini forms, and it's wonderful because you imagine, like, you have your little cooler, you have your ice, you pop it open, it's a hot day, it's going to warm up. Like, a 12-ounce can is going to warm up. You're not going to, unless you chug every one, which you're not going to, it's going to warm up. You get a little 8-ounce little cervecita, it's cool the whole time. You crush it, you're done, and you're ready for a new one. And you get to just
Hmm.
enjoy the coldness for a longer time. And so, just getting the audience up here on the 8-ounce. You don't have these in DC, right? Not
No,
a
I
lot of
haven't
them, at
seen
least.
them. I mean, I usually just go to the grocery store, maybe at like a more beer and wine centric place. You would find them, but these are
8-ounce.
fantastic. I would say,
Okay.
like, I mean, I drink beer quickly, not a great thing to do, I guess, but it's just because, like you said, it gets warm, and if you're drinking a cheap beer, it's pretty much undrinkable at a certain temperature. And I'm thinking about, like, if you're at like a stadium, you're probably prone to get the bigger beer, the 25
Yeah.
ounce Bud Light, because you just don't want to get up as much. But by the time you get to the bottom of that can, It's just
So
like
awful.
but you're committed because you paid like $50 for that, so you're
It's
drinking it all the way
awful.
through. But it's terrible. The 8 ounce, maybe that's the future of ballpark beers, not the small or not the bigger, but smaller. You can like chuck those things like baseballs at people.
Mm,
Can't do that with a big can.
I love it, and then they could come more often to get more money. Because
Mm-hmm.
you feel like, oh, I can have another. Oh, I can have another. Oh, I can have another. But you're feeling it. You're feeling it.
I
All
love
right.
it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I need to get back to Puerto Rico, man.
Yeah. Please do. Please do. Hey, petition your local city council, everyone, to have 8 ounce little mini beers available for everyone, especially this summer. There's no better style of beer to drink in the summer than a small beer because that way you can enjoy it cold as soon as you drink it. So I love it. I love it. And I didn't realize that it wasn't because they keep looking for it, but all they have is Bud Light minis. They don't have the Coors Light. They don't have the Miller Light. They don't have all these other. In Puerto Rico, any gas station is going to have any beer in mini form, like so that people can just stuff it in their little. By the way, I don't think there's drinking and driving laws in Puerto Rico. So if you ever visit Puerto Rico, I suggest renting a little Jeep, a little 4x4, because you're going to need it for the mountains. And then go
Mhm.
ahead and just get a little cooler, fill it up with beer. You could drink on the way. Like there's no drinking and driving. Fortunately, it's not the best thing, but also if it's cultural, it works. So
You
it
gotta
works.
respect
And
the place that you're respect the culture of the place that you're visiting.
you always do. You always do. Last item for our episode today, fair weather fandom.
Ooh, I'm so glad we made some time for this.
I'm not a judge, by the way, folks. I'm not a judge. I personally like to mispronounce fair weather fandom with Mayweather fandom. Um, for no reason, just to keep us remembering Floyd Mayweather. But the Mayweather fandom, like just to keep
Who?
it funny.
Who's that?
Who? Who? Who?
I
Typical.
shouldn't say that so
Typical.
loud. He'll come after us. He's
Yeah.
pretty,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty tough guy.
Yeah. But fair weather fandom. When is it okay to just sort of be like, meh, I want to go for this team? When is it okay to switch? When is it okay to just tune out completely? And I don't necessarily, maybe we need to separate that, Nick, because I think it's
Mhm.
okay to say I'm a fan of this team, but they're so poopy right now. They're a horrible team. I'm going to just like tune them out, right? I'm like
Yeah.
on the volume. I don't necessarily think that's the same thing as fair weather fandom in the sense I think you have to actually jump ship and jump to like like Nick is a Man City fan and he's trying to convince me that he was a Man City fan before they were Man City. I don't know, first of all, if a Man City fan ever tells you that they were a Man City fan before. When was that? Was it were you a
Well,
fan
it's
in
like
the 80s,
hipsters saying that
90s?
they like
You're like
something
yeah,
before
like
they were cool.
they've been pretty
9320, my
good since
friend.
post 2000. They've been since post 2000.
Well,
So you
since
get
they were purchased by the United Arab Emirates. Since
see,
then,
Nick's a huge fan of the United Arab Emirates. Um,
I'm a fan of
please
their work. What can I say? What can I
fly
say?
Emirates, fly Emirates.
Eddie
That's
had anyway.
yeah,
This is not
that guy.
a this is not a Man City ad, but
Yeah,
I think that it should be more normalized to be one, not interested in the sport if your team's not playing. Because honestly, at the end of the day, the 99% of sporting events during the regular season are completely irrelevant and boring to watch.
yeah,
If you just watch because your team is playing, that's great. We just like love that you're watching sports.
yeah.
And I feel like, but there's different levels of that, right? Because even if, let's say, the Penguins are on, so Pittsburgh is my hometown. I've watched the Penguins, but they're not doing so great this year. So this is kind of like strained my relationship with watching hockey because I really hockey is my favorite sport to watch.
Hmm.
I haven't been tuning in to see the Penguins, and therefore I haven't been watching hockey that much. Now that's some pretty fair weather fandom right there. Um, I would I would like to be somebody who just like fully commits and watches the
Mm,
Penguins throughout the course of any given season, regardless of the quality of the team. But there's just other things that I want to watch right now.
yeah.
Um, so that there's the rub. I feel like you don't have to watch every single, you don't need to be getting like the NBA League Pass, the
Mm,
NFL, Red Zone. If you just want to watch your team week by week, kind of like we were talking about how we do with college football, right? Like we're watching come hell or high water each Saturday. We were watching respectively like Wake Forest on my end and UCF on your end. Doesn't matter.
oh, 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 UCF Knights.
You can't see if you're listening to this
Yeah.
on podcast
Podcast,
networks.
that's
But
true.
we're
But
bouncing.
you heard it. You heard it and you felt it. You heard it and you felt it.
But yeah, what are your takes on fair weather fandom? I feel like that's all I really had there. I feel like it should be okay to just watch your
Well,
team.
I realize you're not really a fair weather fan because I'm committing to this idea that you tuning out of the Pittsburgh Penguins does not make you a fair. You know that you still believe for that team. Like that's your team. You don't question. You don't suddenly jump to the Boston Bruins, the Florida Panthers. You
Panthers
don't jump.
destroyed them last night, by the way.
Yeah. Whoo. Whoo, man, the
That's
Florida
the
Panthers. We got to commit to some NHL episodes to chill. We chill. We got to talk. We got to talk chill. Talk about what's going on in the chill universe. Because it's exciting for the Florida Panthers. It's a great time to be a Florida Panthers fan. It's not always. All right, it's Florida. Like literally, those God bless those players, Nick, because they have to mentally get in the ice hockey mood because when they go back to their homes in Florida, it's hot. It was 90 degrees today. It was 90 degrees today.
wow.
So, like, there is definitely some mental strength on those Florida Panthers. Now, granted, no one on the Florida Panthers is actually from Florida, so I think that helps. But just something to pay attention to. That I think it's tough when it's so hot and where you live, but you're playing a game that has to be played so cold. But I don't think you're a fair weather fan, right? So tuning out, I feel like that's the delineation. If you just need to tune out, that means it's just not a good year. Now we all remember being a kid. I still remember being a kid watching the Orlando Magic. It's the only professional sports team the city of Orlando had growing up. So they were literally everything to me. And I still remember the Shaquille O'Neal days. I remember the Tracy McGrady days. I had a pair of T-Max. T-Max were the hottest. So like, other schools, it was always the Jordans. But in Orlando, growing up in Orlando, the T-Max were the shoe. You had to have the new Tracy McGrady's because that's
Love it.
how much he set the world on fire. Shout out to Tracy McGrady, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. For me, hands down, no question. No chip, doesn't matter. One of the best who ever played the game. So I remember watching all those games, and win or lose, I would commit myself as a young person to always watching the Orlando Magic. I just loved watching them play. Dwight Howard, Guido Turkoglu, when they made it to the Eastern
Mm,
Conference Finals, Van Gundy
bringing back
killing it.
memories.
So just wonderful, wonderful memories. And I realize as an adult, when you're sort of balancing so many things, you're not a kid anymore. It's tough. It's a little bit tough to balance the constant viewership. That's why I don't think our fair weather fandom, like why I don't watch Orlando Magic, it's also logistically difficult. I don't live in Orlando anymore. So like I have to pay for a pass
Mhm.
just to watch the games, and when I do see it, they were on TNT the other day. I watched it for like a couple minutes. They weren't doing too well. It's like, then I had to give, a bath to my daughter, so it's like all this stuff. And it's just like,
Yeah.
life gets in the way. So I don't think that's fair weather fandom. It's the jump ship, right? When do you jump to a popular team? And full disclosure, I'm gonna level with you here, Nick. I
Hmm.
feel this way with professional soccer. So like I feel like I was PSG for a while just because I fell in love with the city of Paris. But I didn't love the Neymar
Yeah, the Neymar year.
transfer. I didn't
Yeah.
love that purchase. I didn't love the Mbappe. Like at first, I loved the Mbappe. Let me say, I loved the Mbappe purchase, but I didn't know how that was going to work with Neymar. and obviously that turned into. I loved Edison Cavani when Edison Cavani,
Ooh,
El Toro, was playing for PSG. What? Edison Cavani, like that man, he was the real deal. But now I find myself, Nick, and audience, whoever's watching, I'm like, should I be a Madrid fan? You could invest in Manchester United now, by the way, folks. So maybe should I
yeah,
put like money in Man U and then
shareholder.
say like I'm a stockholder, I'm a shareholder, so
The
this is
bad
my team.
investment. I was gonna put that out there. Manchester United. Avoid. Avoid. That team is gross. Sorry.
That's
But
just
the
that's
point
yeah.
still,
That I don't
you
agree
can
with.
become part owner.
You know what? In spite, everyone invest in Manchester United. You have an opportunity to invest in a professional sports team because you can also do it for the Atlanta Braves, by the way, folks. Atlanta
Huh.
Braves, wonderful, like stadium. If you haven't been to Atlanta, the Battery. Shout out to the Battery. Incredible place, incredible atmosphere. So many restaurants. It's like it's a fun place to be for base. Like some people are still in the like DC, for instance. Like let's throw something in a bad neighborhood and make it nice.
Yeah,
Like
maybe
the
that's for
bad.
another episode. We could talk about the DC arenas trying to move out of DC. So literally it's the Virginia Wizards and the Virginia Capitals.
So I
Anyway,
admittedly I'm a fair weather fan with professional soccer. I don't know, like I'm not really diehard PSG anymore. I love the Edison Cavani days, but like I'm also not too tied there. So should I be a Real Madrid? I love the city of Madrid. Or should I try to be like you, Nick, go into the Premier League, but everything but Man City? Um, just because at this point, for sure, I can't join Man City. Like it's just not. I can't join that group,
yeah,
that
this would be
fandom.
kind of like um bandwagoning at that point. But I wonder if you feel
Ooh,
like you have your primary team, regardless of whatever league, and you have like your secondary teams. I feel like that's okay too. It's like the MLB, I'll root for the Pirates, sadly. But then also my AL team is the Blue Jays for no reason in particular, but just that I like them. In the Premier League, even though they all play against one another, there's no divisions or anything. I like West Ham United and I like Manchester City. That and again, it's for like no reason in particular, just do. So I wonder what you felt about like, do you have secondary teams that you support? And whenever your primary team isn't doing well, you're like, oh, maybe I'll tune in to see blah blah blah.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Um, but I do feel that's fair weather fandom. Like you got to commit to the team. There's no, there should be no secondary. But yes, do I have secondary? And yes, it's my internal fair weather fandom. So I grew up being a Buccaneers fan because that was the closest NFL franchise uh, to where I grew up. Now I live in South Florida, so I obviously am rooting for the Miami Dolphins as well because I think they're a great franchise, a great team. And then my dad, since I can remember, was always rooting for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are perpetually irrelevant, even when they do make it to the playoffs. There's just no real gusto with that team. And so with the NFL, when it comes to Florida teams, I can admit that I'm usually rooting for any Florida team. And they're all in different divisions
Mhm.
too. So it's not like I'm rooting against um, any one of them, any given
Right.
point in time. Hypothetically, some of them, or at least two Florida teams, could make the Super Bowl.
I don't know if the world can sustain that.
Yeah.
So much
So
Florida.
fair weather fandom. Are you a fair weather fan, folks?
Yeah, I
Feel free
mean,
to make comments. Yeah,
who doesn't like fair weather? That's
that's
why people
true.
live in Florida, right?
Yeah, all you need is a light jacket. Not in Florida though. Use shorts and t-shirt perpetually, and flip flops, flippy floppies. So
That sounds nice to me right now.
great conversation here, Nick. Great episode. Um, thank you for some of your insight.
Yeah, thanks for chatting. And if you want to get at us, we will love to read your YouTube comments and forthcoming social media. And we keep saying that every week, but we're going to make one so that you can join in this conversation too. Love to hear your takes on Fairweather fandom, as long as they're not wrong. But yep, get at us.
Okay,
Thanks so much for listening.
Yeah. Take care.